Hey everybody, and welcome to the weekly Scopes from the 15th to the 21st of June. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly Scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I, formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly Scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellational Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes, and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year. And Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra-parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contra-parallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contra-parallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contra-parallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contra-parallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contra-parallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contra-parallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contra-parallels and parallels are. So we've got quite a lot of influences this week, so I'm just gonna dive right in. We've got about 5 or 7 of them maybe. So yeah, a lot of Mars energy this week. So we've got Mars making a square to Uranus now. This entered on the 13th of June, is exact at 10:46 on the 15th of June and leaves us around the 17th of June, but because it's Mars and Uranus, it's really strong energy. Mars is in Leo and Uranus is in Taurus. Then we've got Jupiter making another square to Saturn. This entered on the 10th of June, is exact at 3:35 p.m. on the 15th of June and leaves us on the 20th of June, and Jupiter's in Gemini and Saturn's in Pisces. And then we've got Venus making a parallel, which is the same as a conjunction to Mars. This entered on the 13th of June, is exact at 4:12 a.m. on the 17th of June and leaves us on the 21st of June, and Venus is in Aries, and we already know where Mars is at, right? And then the Sun makes a semi-square to Venus, and this entered on the 11th of May. Then it was exact on the 17th of May, then it's also exact on the 17th of June at 3:52 p.m. and leaves us on the 26th of June at 6:17 p.m. and Sun is in Gemini and Venus is in Aries. Jupiter makes a square to Neptune and Neptune's in Pisces, and this entered on the 14th of June, is exact on the 19th of June at 4:15 a.m. and leaves us on the 23rd of June at 4:50 p.m. and the Sun makes a parallel to Mercury, and this is exact at 3:36 a.m. on the 21st of June. This entered on the 13th of June and leaves us on the 26th of June, so lasting us right up until next week. And Mercury's in Gemini, and then Mercury makes a parallel to Jupiter. This entered on the 12th of June, is exact at 4:08 on the 21st of June and leaves us on the 27th of June, and this lasts us right up until next week as well. So what's going on in this midweek of June, right? So it's an astrological storm of growth and transformation. With Mars is square to Uranus, it creates a sort of electrical, impulsive energy where we can be dealing with unexpected jolts, experiences, things happening that demand our immediate attention. Think of it as the universe throwing plot twists into our carefully scripted lives. So this energy is going to mess with our routine this week. Jupiter squares both Saturn and Neptune, creating an astrological tug of war between our need to grow, get outside of our comfort zone, and our need to stay in it, as well as limitations and restrictions that may come our way in our plans to change, even if we're working on change, right? And it's basically a tug of war between our need for growth, as I said, and limitation, dreams and reality. So in a nutshell, it's giving expectation versus reality vibes. So what does this mean? What we want to happen may not happen, because reality may kick us in the butt this week, right? Yeah. Then we've got Venus's Mars's parallel. This brings passionate fire energy to our week, right? Which we can use to heat up, spice up things in the bedroom or out of the bedroom in our relationships, and, you know, be creative with it as well. The Sun semi-square to Venus creates a tension between our thoughts and values. So I don't know how can I explain this. We may meet someone, or someone we know may try and push us outside of our comfort zone when it comes to our values, or we may just get rid of our standards altogether, just because, you know, our mindset this week can be, you know, I'm going to go and do what I want. But think about the long-term consequences before, you know, doing things that may be outside of your comfort zone when it comes to your values, because a lot of the time it's these things that we find hard to get over when we do in our psychological, emotional, spiritual work. You know, we can find it hard to forgive ourselves the most as human beings. So just make sure that if you're going to throw your standards to the wind, you know, let them go, that you really are prepared for the consequences that may come with that, which may be good or bad, you know. And then we've got the Sun and Mercury making a parallel in Gemini, and Mercury also paralleling with Jupiter, and all of this energy is supercharging our communication and learning this week. So positively, as I said, the Mars-Uranus square gives us the motivation needed to break free from our stagnation, our comfort zone, right? While Jupiter squares, you know, push us to build something meaningful from our big dreams and ideas. So being practical with our ideas and putting them into action rather than just thinking about them. And Venus is parallel to Mars, right? Adds to this motivation, especially when things get tough. This gives us the energy to keep on going, right? But we just need to watch out for overstepping people's boundaries with this energy and allowing them to overstep ours, you know, because we can just misuse this energy. It's very passionate, powerful energy that we can use to make great strides, progress in our career goals, personal development goals, spiritual goals this week. So use it wisely. We could also use it recklessly in hookups and stuff, and, you know, so have hookups and that's not what I'm saying, but just make sure that whatever you invest this energy in this week is what you really want to see the result of, as I said before. Now, the sadder side of this week's transit is that, you know, the Mars is square Uranus, as I said, can trigger impulsive decisions or conflicts that escalate from 0 to 100 real quickly. And Jupiter square to Saturn and Neptune may leave us feeling caught between crushing reality checks and deceptive fantasies. So as I said, we may get lost in fantasy this week, but reality may bite us in the bum, and this can be confusing and hard to take, you know, and it can crush our kind of like spirit. And, you know, if you do experience a setback this week, try and be gentle with yourself. Sometimes, you know, with Saturn involved, it's not about, oh, you know, it's just a fantasy, it will never happen. It's like, how much do you want this fantasy? How much are you prepared to give up to achieve your goals and fantasies, you know? And do you really want this fantasy? Is this really your fantasy that you want, or fantasy that you've been told to want, you know? The Sun semi-square to Venus brings frustration between what we think we want versus what we want, as I said. So the best use of this week's energy is to channel the Mars-Uranus energy into strategic growth and innovation, rather than just rebelling without a cause and just wasting our energy recklessly, right? Use Jupiter's challenging aspects to reality check our dreams without abandoning them. Lean into the Gemini communication energy to express rather than suppress your feelings, bottling them up. Express yourself, but try and do it in a way that's respectful to your own needs and the needs of others. Psychologically, these transits activate the Saturn integration process. The tension between Mars and Uranus reveals where we may have been playing it too safe in our life, where the Jupiter squares lights up the gap between our ideal self and our current reality. We are being asked to hold space for both our limitations and unlimited potential, which is sort of like a classic Jungian paradox, right? So karmically, these aspects want us to work through past life patterns around authority, freedom and self-expression. The Jupiter-Neptune energy is the most significant here, so the contact between Jupiter, Saturn and Neptune. It wants us to be discerning, learning when to trust and when to question what we see, what others say, using our judgment. Ultimately, this week's energy on the karmic level is a chance to balance the karmic scales by consciously choosing how to respond to frustration and to this week's events, rather than reacting on autopilot, which lots of us really do, because we have automatic reactions buried in the subconscious, and whenever we're triggered by anything, even if someone says good morning, our instant response can be good morning back. It doesn't have to be profound, so we just need to question why we react and respond to things the way that we do, and to try and consciously choose our reactions. Spiritually and esoterically, these transits sort of initiate us this week to higher consciousness through challenge rather than comfort. So we're being pushed to wake up through conflict, really, and we can just see it as a divine wake-up call, especially the Mars square Uranus aspect, and Jupiter square to Saturn and Neptune represents the soul, our soul's journey, our higher consciousness journey to tell the truth from illusion. The parallels of Jupiter and Gemini connect to the Karsic wisdom of divine intelligence, or higher intelligent, right, or the things you've been researching and learning logically over your lifetime or lifetimes for some of you. Esoterically, these aspects activate the throat, the Gemini energy, the heart, Leo energy, and the crown chakra, Pisces, right, simultaneously creating an energetic pathway for higher consciousness to flow into practical action. So the strong Gemini influence this week connects to the sacred archetype of the messenger, showing that how you communicate during this week can carry significant emotional, spiritual and psychological weight, So this week's astrological weather doesn't just bring change, it brings deep transformation if you allow it, to your mindset, to your values, to how you respond to things, right? And we can turn this week's challenges into upgrades by consciously working with this week's energies rather than against them. So ultimately, it's a perfect time to level up your consciousness and claim or reclaim your spiritual, emotional, psychological, even physical power for some of you, right? So now I'm just going to give the mantras, the guidance for each of the zodiac signs for this week. So my mantras and guidance for this week are based on the majority of energies that you have in your natal chart. So some of you may have natal charts that are dominant in more than one energy. You may have your rising sign, your sun sign and your moon sign all in different energies. You may have aspects to different planets. So ultimately this could mean you have some planets that are in fire, some in water signs, some in earth signs. So for example, if you have have most of your planets in Aries, Scorpio and Capricorn, read the mantras for all of these signs. And if you have all your planets mostly in Taurus, read the mantra for Taurus, but you may also want to read for Libra, because Venus rules Taurus and Libra, right? So yeah. Okay, so if you have the majority of Aries energy in your chart, charge ahead with your, signature fire and initiation this week. Let the cosmic spark, push you, motivate you to new beginnings. Even when challenges come up, remember bold, courageous, brave actions now set the stage for future victories. Embrace your inner warrior and stay true to your passionate self. Yes, you guessed it, but also respect other people's boundaries, right? Taurus, keep your feet planted on the ground, right? Even as the stars shift, let stability be your guiding light. Trust that each slow burning moment builds comfort and abundance, and treat yourself to small, meaningful pleasures. Your steady heart knows the value of patience. Gemini, your mind thrives on dynamic ideas this week and playful conversations. Use the expansive energy to channel research into creative plans. Make every conversation a chance to learn and share wisdom. Embrace your dual nature with curiosity and wit this week. Cancer, nurture your soul by tuning into the deeper currents of emotion and intuition. When the celestial astrological tides stir up inner waves, retreat into heartfelt self-care and gentle reflection. Your compassionate sensitivity is your secret superpower this week. Leo, step into the limelight with an empowered raw. Your radiant energy attracts abundance, even if challenges, temper, balance your sign. Remember, every setback refines, changes, makes better your creative spark, motivation. Own your brilliance and lead with warm confidence, and allow others to be brilliant too. Guide them rather than, dim their light. Virgo, let structure and routine and intuition mix and blend into practical planning and action this week. This is your moment to sort out, organise and sign. One unexpected cosmic shifts and events test your routine. Your analytical mind will find their inventive workaround. Trust your innate wisdom to keep things in perfect order. Libra, balance your inner scales in between transformative energies. Relationships and dreams align when you act with grace and balance. Use this time to harmonise your need for connection with your vision for growth. Use your sense of fairness as a bridge between passion and peace. Scorpio, dive into the depths of transformation fearlessly. Embrace both your shadow and light with honest reflection. The cosmic currents reveal hidden truths. Use them to evolve and heal. Your intense insight turns challenges into powerful rebirths. Sagittarius, expand your horizons with adventurous optimism and thoughtful exploration. When the cosmos challenges your limits, lean into growth and enjoy the journey. Your quest for truth pushes you towards ever widening vistas of wisdom, places. That's what vistas are, yeah. Aquarius, innovate boldly in between cosmic paradoxes. Let your forward-thinking ideas light up new paths. Embrace both intellect and intuition this week in your mission for, a better tomorrow and to reach your highest potential. Your unique perspective is the catalyst for exciting, the motivator for exciting change. Pisces, float through the transformations that come this week with dreaming resilience and compassionate insight for yourself and others. Use your natural empathy to mix intuition with creative clarity, opening the door to healing and inspiration. Your gentle soul transforms obstacles into art this week, so be creative to let out your emotions. So now I'm just going to talk about what content creators should talk about this week, or what sort of content you should take in this week, So content that revolves around technology hacks that will make make us innovate our daily routines, talking about how we can be open to healthy rebellion, getting outside of our comfort zone in healthy ways rather than destructive ways, how we can turn, do-it-yourself projects into practical things that can help us improve our psychological and emotional and spiritual health, talk about how we can be open to having reality checks, how we can, adult and meet our responsibilities rather than run away from them, how we can manifest without falling into delusion that maybe we just have to sit and say mantras and then everything will fall out the sky. Also talking about how not everything that we want is what we need, and that's why we may not be able to manifest them. Talk about the difference between generations, like Gen Z spirituality versus boomer practicality, and how it's always best to take the best from each generation rather than say all boomers are wrong or Gen Zs are wrong and stuff like that. Giving strategic advice on how we can do research and how we can critically think about the information and the influence we allow others and the world to have on our lives. Also talk about how we can become a power couple, especially with all our different personality traits, how we can productively work with our partners to create the life that we both want, how we can improve our date nights, how we can confront conflict in our relationships without it being aggressive. Talk about how we can be brave in our fashion, personal style experiments and expression. Talk about how we can balance our ego versus intimacy in our relationships, getting what we want and giving our partners what we want, how we can do that without becoming people pleasery, giving strategic information on that, how to work through codependency and how to work on interdependency, explaining what interdependency is, how we can network, how we can reset our mindset, how we can tell the difference between content red flags, how to not spread misinformation, how to fact check information that we implement into our life, before implementing it, how to build just discernment and good judgment, how to avoid influenceable life hack content, because life hacks are good but they don't work for everyone, and instead giving content on how, or listening to content and how you can look at your own life by analysing your emotional, psychological and spiritual needs and creating life hacks that are relevant for you. And also content about how to not take in superficial romance. We can be romantic in our relationship, but a lot of the time, what social media and rom-coms get us to believe about romance, relationships can be hard work, especially when we start having that one-to-one relationship with ourselves, so getting real about what it takes to build a successful relationship. And we can get real about that in a big way if we take on the work of trying to understand and manage your own psychological, emotional, physical and spiritual needs, and financial needs. And once you start working on that, you can realise that yes, there's romance in routine, there's romance in doing that deep inner shadow work, and there's romance in overcoming obstacles in your relationships, but not making it romantic that we'll ride or die, it doesn't matter what happens. Yes, romantic relationships have an element of that, but they must be peaceful as well, there must be balance. So content about how we can find balance in our relationships can do well. So now I'm just going to talk about the day-to-day aspects and how they influence us. On the 15th of June, the Sun enters Gemini at 2:15 a.m. The Moon enters Void of Course at 4:57 a.m. and the Moon enters its disseminating moon phase at 5:23 p.m. Mars is exact square to Uranus is exact at 10:47 a.m. and Jupiter square to Saturn is exact at 3:35 p.m. So the Moon void of course adds an energy pocket where our actions can feel disconnected from outcomes, and the Sun in Gemini supports open communication and increases our mental flexibility, which is perfect for managing today's tasks. And although, you know, today's energy with the squares happening, you know, can feel restricted, it's actually helping us build dreams with solid foundations, you know, getting real about what it takes to reach our goals. And this astrological jolt from our routine can help us break free from situations that have been holding us back. And the disseminating moon phase supports sharing what we've learned, making this an excellent time to mentor others or allow others to mentor you. And with the moon void, of course, as well, it can make it hard for us to predict the outcomes because of the squares with Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and Uranus as well. So we can just feel frustrated, you know, like we're taking one step forward and two steps back. And these tests, see them as tests to your patience rather than things that are trying to stop you. As I said before, you know, rethinking and coming up with a perfect plan to reach your goals is the way forward. We can use the moon's void, of course, to journal or meditate, use Mars's Uranus energy to take calculated risks and create realistic step-by-step plans to achieve our goals, you know. On the 16th of June, the moon enters Aquarius. Mercury's semi-square to Uranus is exact at 9:02 a.m. and Mercury's in Gemini and Uranus is in Taurus, and Mercury's semi-square to Mars is exact at 6:29 p.m. And Mars is in Leo. So when the moon glides into forward-thinking Aquarius, it wants us to think outside of the box, be open to newness, right, and innovation. Mercury's semi-square to Uranus can add to us being stubborn and add to the intellectual friction, but this friction, you know, this confusion can trigger unexpected ideas and solutions to our problems. Mercury's semi-square to Mars allows us to sort of like be passionate in our thoughts and words, you know. It gives us literal brain on fire energy, with our mind being able to process information at superhuman speeds, while our emotions seek freedom and revolutionary growth and you know, change. So it's a perfect energy today for intellectual breakthroughs through managing the mental voltage, which will be our biggest challenge. So watch out for overstepping other people's boundaries, right? But ultimately today we can just have aha moments that seem to download straight from the universe. It allows us to be focused on being charitable and humanitarian projects and stuff and working in teams. It allows us to connect seemingly unrelated ideas together, and this can lead to brilliant solutions to problems that have been living rent-free in your head. And we just have the courage and drive to express our innovative ideas with others with confidence and passion, you know. So it's great for brainstorming sessions, tech innovations, or even starting that podcast or social media project that you've been thinking about. But negatively, the Aquarius moon can add to us feeling detached emotionally today, when connecting with others may serve us better, you know. So don't just push people out unless you really need to, you know, check in with yourself. Mercury's friction with Uranus and Mars can add to the mental restlessness of this week, and we can just feel all over the place and unable to focus on one thing at a time for more than 5 minutes. Our words and other people's words can become too impulsive and sharp and confusing, overstepping boundaries, adding to the conflicts in communication this week. And information overload, where our brain tries to process too many ideas at once, can just make us feel mentally fatigued and tired or anxious, you know. So watch out for that my brain won't shut up feeling when you're trying to relax or sleep. So today we should take a breath before speaking, especially when discussing sensitive topics. Try writing down your innovative ideas rather than immediately acting on them, giving them time to mature over the coming days and weeks, you know. Create dedicated space for your wildest dreams and brainstorm, you know, because the Aquarius moon loves a good whiteboard, vision board moment, you know. Allow ourselves to, you know, take some time out so to process. So a quick walk or a meditation, as I said, can work wonders when we're feeling mentally scattered all over the place. Tech detoxes, you know, putting down the phone for 5-10 minutes or your tablet or your laptop, whatever, throughout the day can prevent information overload. It's important to schedule some creative time this today and be open to the intellectual chaos, but ground yourself in practical reality as well. and this is how we can turn today's high voltage energy into pure creative genius. On the 17th of June, Venus's parallel to Mars is exact at 4:13. The Sun makes a sextile to Chiron at 8:16 a.m. and Sun's in Gemini and Chiron's in Aries, and Venus's parallel to Mars happens when Venus is in Aries and Mars is in Leo, right? And the Sun semi-square to Venus, which is at 6:05 p.m, happens when the Sun's in Gemini and Venus is in Aries, as I said. So the Sun sextile to Chiron helps us to heal through our words, so it helps us to kind of like resolve any communication problems we've had through this week. And this is when talk therapy meets glow up energy, and old wounds around rejection and shyness can heal faster if we verbalise them over the next few days. It allows us to drop truth bombs like confetti, and our vulnerability can become our superpower, but negatively oversharing can make us feel like we're exposed, as a Spotify public playlist, right? So we have to balance honesty with boundaries. The best use of this energy is to share your story in an authentic way, and your story can become someone else's survival guide. So podcast your feels, write those vulnerable tweets, or mentor someone. The Sun semi-square to Venus positively allows us to update our love language, so good for date nights. And even if it's date night with yourself, you know, if you're self-partnered or single, it's great for ditching people-pleasing ways and asking, what do I actually want? Negatively, petty arguments over text tone or mismatched plans can come up, with Gemini's indecision and Aries impatient. This can equal you up 3 a.m. vibes in text and stuff, you know, to release any complaint that you see that your partner's done wrong, you know. But just watch out for, you know, just complaining about anything and anything. Negotiate or express your needs calmly, and use I feel statements like their VIP passes rather than accusing your partner of stuff, you know. The power move today is channeling the Venus-Mars energy into Chiron's healing, owning your scars and treat it like a software update. You know, it can be annoying but necessary for growth. And in terms of shadow work, look at that need to people please or dominate, converse and unpack that, and unpack any other toxic things you may be doing in communication as well. Fire signs, you know, lead but listen. Your passion's magnetic, but not everybody's ready for, you know, your wattage, for your experience or your information right now. Earth signs, stability can be boring right now, so, you know, take some time out to balance the chaos and have some fun, right? Air signs, communicate, don't manipulate. Your words can have weight right now that can bring others down and even yourself down. And water signs, feel deeply but don't drown in others' drama or your own drama. On the 18th of June, the moon void of course starts at 1:09 a.m. The Sun makes a biquintile to Pluto when the Sun's in Gemini and Pluto's in Capricorn, and this is exact at 10:02 a.m. The Moon enters Pisces at 2:06 p.m. and the Moon enters its last quarter moon phase at 8:19 p.m. So today, it's a sort of a daydreamy, imaginative, creative day. The moon void of course, you know, again brings that disconnected feeling, like trying to run in a dream where your legs won't quite work properly. The Sun in Curious Gemini, forming a biquintile to, you know, the powerhouse that is Pluto, which is in Capricorn right now, allows us to have disciplined creative insights, especially into our deepest patterns, like the way we are, where we were are, so why we think the way we do, the way we react the way we do, which is really good this week, because I said at the beginning we're gonna sort of like have to deal with, you know, fantasy, what we want to happen, and reality, what does happen, right? So this energy allows us to go into our hidden motivations, and the moon in Capricorn kind of washes everything in empathetic spiritual vibes, you know, and the last quarter moon allows us and supports us in releasing what no longer serves us and for our growth, you know. So ultimately this day has spiritual detox meets creative genius energy that's perfect for deep inner work and, you know, problem solving. So yeah, it helps us to be in tune with the deep psychological and emotional patterns and see them from completely fresh angles. And these can be good patterns, not necessarily toxic, you know. You can make a list of what you feel that you do well, and a list of what you feel that you don't do so well. Get into the core of your limiting beliefs, psychological, spiritual and emotional trauma that's been living rent free in your head for years, and, you know, making you react or act on autopilot. And the moon in Pisces allows us to have empathy and compassion for ourselves and others as we do this inner work, have these deep thoughts or conversation. So it makes it easier for us to forgive ourselves and others. And the last quarter moon, as I said, allows us to start or continue the work of letting go of outdated versions of ourselves with compassion rather than judgment. But on the shadow side, with the moon void of cord, it can make us feel spacey for a while and unproductive, and this can lead to decision paralysis, where we feel like we can't make decisions, or a weird feeling of swimming through molasses or boggy water, you know, it's thick, sludgy, it's not clear water where we can move our arms and legs clearly. And the sun's bi-quintile to Pluto, although sort of energy can trigger power struggles or obsessive thinking patterns. And the moon in Pisces can blare us and make us vulnerable to energy vampires, or we can just escape, as always with Neptune energy. Neptune rules Pisces, right, into wanting to, you know, spend too much Netflix and chilling, or binge drinking and overindulging in drugs and stuff like that, you know. So we just have to watch out for that. And it can also make us want to ignore red flags and live in delusion as well. So we have to watch out for that temptation to numb rather than process what needs releasing right now, as the emotional tension can make us resist the necessary endings that we need to go through right now. Today, again, ultimately is good for completing tasks that you've already started, journaling, meditation, having some chill out time, you know. It can lead to breakthrough insights about our deeper patterns or you know, relationships, and this can be informative and help us overcome what we need to overcome right now. Even a voice memo, art or writing, stuff like that can help us capture our unique perspective right now as well. And the moon in Pisces allows us to protect our energy with visualization or other techniques while staying open to creative inspiration and spiritual connection. And, you know, it's just the perfect day to let go of what no longer serves us with gratitude. Perfect for shadow work, creative problem solving around deep-seated issues, and spiritual and other cleansing, letting go rituals. So be open to the strange magic of today's energy. It's low-key perfect for leveling up your consciousness, you know. On the 19th of June, Jupiter makes a square to Neptune, and I talked about this at the beginning of the week, and it's exact at 4:15 today, and leaves us on the 23rd of June. So yeah, on the 20th of June, Mars makes a quincunx to Saturn at 1:09 a.m. and Mars is in Leo and Saturn's in Pisces. The Sun makes a semi-sextile to Uranus at 6:48 a.m. and the Sun's in Gemini and Uranus in Taurus. The Moon enters void, of course. It's done that a lot this week, hasn't it? More than usual in a normal week, I think. But yeah, at 11:32 a.m. and then the Moon enters Aries at 5 15 p.m. Yeah, so today's energy serves a complex astrological cocktail that's all about finding the balance between opposites. Mars in Leo making a square to Pisces is about allowing us to find a balance between our drive to shine and the need for spiritual surrender, or surrender to something or someone or higher than us, that can just be meeting the needs of your job today. So ultimately, the bright side of today is Mars's quincunx to Saturn allows us to be fierce in our individuality and be compassionate in our awareness. So it can help us find a sweet spot between being brave and spiritual surrender. Think of it as learning to be a spiritual warrior. The Sun semi-sextile to Uranus helps us to be practical and apply our ideas into our day-to-day life, and it's also great for technological breakthroughs or innovative communication. The Moon entering Aries allows us to, increase our confidence about the changes that we may want to make in our life as well. But negatively, Mars's quincunx to Saturn can just add to the frustration of this week. It can be and feel like today, and the next couple of days, trying to drive with one foot on the gas pedal and the other one on the brake. We can feel torn between making a brave move and holding back due to uncertainty or spiritual considerations. There's a potential for energy to be misdirected and creating situations where we are working hard but feeling like we are getting nowhere. The Sun and Uranus' semi-sextile can bring us great ideas, but we may struggle to ground them in reality, to carry them out in reality. And the moon void of course for the 6 to 7 hours may make us, our focus can completely evaporate, making it hard for us to be productive, and with the Moon in Aries there, it adds to the chance, the risk of us having impulsive reactions or actions to today's frustrations. We can feel like we suddenly want to burn everything down rather than finding balance. So try to think before you react and act, and respect other people's boundaries while also enforcing your own, but giving grace and forgiveness for yourself and others if you do or say something that's out of order, not right, So ultimately, today is a time for problem solving, being practical, brainstorming, thinking outside of the box, being courageous, constructively taking one small brave action at a time, and this is how you will reach your goals today. It's teaching us the delicate art of spiritual assertiveness, being brave while remaining sensitive to the bigger picture, helping us to find a rhythm between pushing forward and surrendering. And this is how we can unlock the day's hidden genius. On the 21st of June, the Sun's parallel to Mercury is exact at 3:37 a.m. Mercury leaves out of bounds at 3:37 a.m. The summer solstice is exact at 3:42 a.m. Mercury makes a quincunx to Neptune at 4:14 a.m. Mercury makes a trine to the Moon's north node at 9 a.m. and Mercury's parallel to Jupiter is exact at 4:09 p.m. So, with Mercury returning from out of bounds, our mental disbalance can come in balance again, where our thoughts may have been out of place or widely innovative or low-key chaotic. Mercury coming back in bounds allows us to find practical expression for this week's energy ideas, and we've had a lot of that this week, right? So this is good to help us work on improving our communication skills, having important conversations, writing projects or anything requiring mental clarity right now. And I'm going to do an in-depth special, so check out the playlist for the summer solstice. But ultimately, the summer solstice is all about new beginnings, and it can shine a light on the best path forward for us, and it's sort of like bringing in summer, but more about that on the special, right? So with Mars's quincunx to Neptune, it creates a vibe check between our drive, our motivation represented by Mars, and our dreams represented by Neptune. We can feel like we're trying to sprint through the fog. The confidence is there, but the direction feels hazy, uncertain, you know. So instead of forcing action, use this energy to make adjustments, switch up, you know, fine tune things between your assertiveness and sensitivity. It's a really good energy for creative and spiritual projects rather than practical matters as we go into the weekend. We close down the week, right? Mercury's trine to the North Node allows us to focus on our higher purpose, what we really want from life, and to think about what changes to bring into our life to make this happen, or to continue doing to reach our highest potential, right? Also allows us to network with the right people and access big picture thinking that serves us for our highest good, but just watch out to not over promise or exaggerate things, and with the energy of Mercury's parallel to Jupiter, right? So the best use of today's energy and this week's energy is to use it to communicate our visions while being mindful of, you know, Neptune's influence on this week that can bring confusion and want us to run off into intoxicating substances and habits, and also ignore red flags, you know, that can make us being delulu and making the wrong decisions, you know. Do the things that make you feel calm and centered while also being practical and meeting the needs of your routine, setting intentions that align with both your practical goals and your spiritual, psychological and emotional needs and aspirations. Trust that the conversations and ideas that come up this week are guiding you towards your true path, and, you know, remember to be gentle with yourself and others, you know. Be empathetic, but don't allow others to overstep your boundaries or overstep others, and apologize. Sometimes accepting sorry or saying sorry can diffuse situations rather than them blowing out of proportion, you know, especially in our intimate relationships this week. So yes, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 15th to the 21st of June.